There comes a moment in every human life when standing still becomes more painful than moving forward, when the comfort of the familiar becomes a prison and the unknown starts to look like freedom. Self-transformation is not just a lifestyle choice, it is a psychological revolution. It begins with a whisper, "I can be more than this." And for those who dare to listen, life is never the same again. The psychology of transformation is simple, yet profoundly difficult to live. We are wired for routine, comfort, and habit. The brain prefers familiarity, even when familiarity hurts us. But transformation demands friction, the uncomfortable breaking down of old mental patterns to build something stronger. It asks you to question who you are, not to destroy yourself, but to uncover the person buried beneath years of fear, doubt, and conditioning. Transformation isn't about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. True transformation demands emotional courage. You will confront your insecurities, you will battle your past, you will outgrow relationships, habits, and identities. And most people stop here not because they lack desire, but because they lack resilience. Transformation is for the brave, not the perfect. Mistakes are not signs of failure. They are milestones of evolution. Pain becomes feedback. Discipline becomes self-respect. And growth becomes your way of life. Transformation also thrives on self-honesty. Nothing changes until you admit what is hurting you, what you're avoiding, and what you truly want. Denial is comfortable, but it is a silent killer of potential. The day you tell the truth to yourself, everything changes. You stop blaming the world and realize your life is a mirror of your choices, and your future is a reflection of the choices you are about to make. And finally, transformation requires vision, a belief in a future you cannot yet see. You must become loyal to your future self, not your current limitations. That is the psychology of transformation, moving from who you are to who you are capable of becoming. Not instantly, not perfectly, but relentlessly. You are not stuck. You are just early in the process. Transformation is not an event. It is a journey of becoming. And the most powerful thing you can ever do is to begin. Transformation does not begin with motivation or inspiration. It begins with discomfort, a subtle inner irritation that whispers that life, as it currently stands, is too small for who you could become. People rarely change when they are comfortable. They change when something inside them refuses to accept mediocrity, repetition, or stagnation. That strange, quiet dissatisfaction is not depression or defeat. It is an internal rebellion against a life unaligned with one's potential. It is the moment when a person stops pretending, stops numbing themselves with distractions, and begins to feel the truth that something must evolve. In psychology, this is the tension between your current identity and your ideal future self. And until that tension becomes strong enough, change remains a wish instead of a necessity. But discomfort alone is not enough. Many people are unhappy without ever transforming because they avoid the very thing that makes transformation possible: self-awareness. Most run from their thoughts, afraid of what they might find in silence. They fill their days with noise, busyness, scrolling, and external validation because self-reflection requires courage. True transformation demands facing yourself without filters, acknowledging laziness when you call it exhaustion, fear when you call it practicality, insecurity when you call it humility. It requires you to see not only what is wrong around you, but what is unhealed within you. Growth is never blocked by circumstances, it is blocked by blind spots. Self-awareness begins with asking painful questions. Why do I react this way? Why do I keep repeating the same mistakes? What am I avoiding? Who am I pretending to be? These questions disrupt ego defenses, the protective illusions we create to feel safe and justified. The ego would rather defend a broken identity than risk building a better one. This is why transformation requires honesty. You must choose truth over comfort, clarity over illusion, responsibility over blame. Not everyone is ready for that, but those who are, begin to see that their life is not limited by the world, it is limited by the self they are unwilling to outgrow. The beauty of this process is that the moment discomfort meets awareness, a doorway opens. You realize you are not trapped, you are simply still attached to who you were. And the moment you admit that the current version of yourself is no longer enough, a new chapter begins. Transformation is not sudden. It starts quietly in the mind with a shift in identity. You stop saying "this is who I am" and start asking, "Who can I become?" That single question breaks years of psychological stagnation. It turns struggle into purpose, pain into direction, and discomfort into fuel. Nothing changes until the inner world changes first. The external improvements people chase, money, body, success, habits, are just reflections of an inner decision to evolve. When the mind changes, life follows. Real transformation begins when the desire to grow becomes stronger than the desire to stay the same. And once a person reaches that point, the world can no longer hold them where they used to be. True self-transformation shatters the illusion that change happens with willpower alone. We are not only logical beings, we are emotional, habitual, and deeply influenced by the past. Many people try to build a new life using the same mindset that created their old one. They set goals, make plans, repeat affirmations, but beneath all of that, their subconscious identity remains unchanged, and the subconscious always wins. If you secretly believe you are unworthy, you will sabotage success. If you believe you are destined to fail, effort feels pointless. If you fear judgment, you will shrink yourself to stay safe. The mind protects what it knows, even if it's painful. This psychological homeostasis, the instinct to stay familiar, is the biggest enemy of transformation. Real change requires a new internal identity, not just new behavior. You don't wake up disciplined overnight. You become the kind of person for whom discipline is natural. You don't force confidence. You slowly build self-trust through action and integrity. You don't adopt success. You grow into the person capable of holding success without collapsing under insecurity. Transformation is not a task. It is a rebirth, and rebirth is uncomfortable because it demands the death of who you used to be. People fear losing their old identity even when that identity brought them misery. Pain feels safer than uncertainty. Familiarity feels safer than freedom. But you cannot become someone new while clinging to who you were. Psychologically, identity change begins with emotional recognition. You must understand the stories you tell yourself. I am not enough. People like me don't succeed. Change is scary. I need approval to feel valuable. These narratives shape behavior more than knowledge ever will. To transform, one must dismantle these internal beliefs and rebuild identity through self-respect, self-discipline, and consistent aligned actions. Each time you choose growth over old patterns, you send a message to your brain: I am changing. The nervous system adapts, the subconscious rewrites itself, new neural pathways form. What once felt unnatural becomes instinct over time, not because you forced it, but because you evolved into it. However, identity evolution demands emotional courage. You must face fears, accept failure, release past versions of yourself without mourning them forever. Growth requires grief for wasted time, broken patterns, lost comfort, and people who no longer fit your future. It also requires solitude. The cocoon stage is lonely. No one applauds you when you're rewiring your life in silence. The world will not recognize your transformation until it is undeniable, and by then, you will no longer need their recognition. The greatest shift happens when you stop asking, "How do I change?" and begin asking, "Who am I becoming?" Because the former keeps you stuck in effort, while the latter lifts you into identity. Your environment, habits, and confidence all align naturally when your identity shifts. Transformation is not about forcing a new life. It's about becoming a new self so fully that the old life can no longer find you. Self-transformation demands that you confront your shadow, the parts of yourself you avoid, deny, or pretend do not exist. Every human being carries wounds, insecurities, suppressed desires, and hidden fears that quietly shape decisions. You may present confidence while secretly fearing abandonment. You may show kindness while harboring resentment and bitterness. You may chase achievement not because you love growth, but because you are terrified of being overlooked. Transformation begins when you stop running from your inner truth. The shadow isn't your enemy. It is simply the unacknowledged truth of who you are, shaped by childhood experiences, past failures, societal conditioning, and emotional scars. What you repress doesn't disappear, it influences you silently. It affects your reactions, relationships, ambitions, and self-worth. The more you hide it, the more power it has. When you confront your shadow, you stop being driven by unconscious forces. Instead of reacting blindly, you respond consciously. Instead of projecting your insecurities onto others, you take responsibility for them. Instead of repeating the same emotional cycles, you break them. This process is uncomfortable because it forces self-honesty. You must admit your jealousy, your pride, your laziness, your sensitivity, your fear. Most people never transform because they cannot bear to meet the unflattering parts of themselves. But growth requires humility. You have to acknowledge the truth before you can evolve beyond it. Facing your shadow also means acknowledging old wounds. Perhaps you learned to remain silent to avoid conflict. Perhaps you learned to overwork to gain love. Perhaps you learned to shrink so others would accept you. These patterns are not flaws. They were survival strategies. But what protected you in the past may be imprisoning you now. To transform, you must update your emotional operating system. You must forgive yourself for who you had to be when life was unkind. You must release shame and embrace understanding. The shadow becomes a teacher when approached with compassion rather than judgment. Psychologically, shadow work integrates disowned emotions back into consciousness. You are no longer split between the person you show and the person you hide. You become whole. Wholeness brings strength, emotional stability, self-acceptance, grounded confidence. You stop needing validation because you no longer validate your existence through others. You validate it through truth. This allows you to act from authenticity rather than fear. You communicate directly instead of pleasing. You set boundaries without guilt. You pursue goals aligned with your values, not your insecurities. Transformation doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming real. The person who knows their darkness is far more powerful than the one who pretends to be purely light. When you own your flaws, no one can use them against you. When you stop hiding from yourself, you stop running from life. And only then do you gain the emotional strength to build a self that is consciously chosen, not unconsciously inherited. True transformation is not about escaping who you are, it's about meeting yourself fully so you can transcend what no longer serves your evolution. Self-transformation requires discipline, not the rigid, punishing kind, but the quiet, consistent, self-respecting kind. Most people never change because they wait for motivation, inspiration, or a perfect moment. Transformation does not come from emotional excitement. It comes from disciplined action. Discipline is the bridge between who you are and who you want to become. Without it, dreams remain fantasies, promises to yourself remain broken, and identity remains tethered to old habits. Real change is not dramatic, it is built on small, repetitive decisions. The discipline to wake up and do what you need to do even when you don't feel like it. The discipline to turn away from distractions and sit with discomfort. The discipline to build habits instead of chasing impulses. Willpower is not enough. Structure, routine, and intentional decisions forge a new identity. Discipline demands that you treat your future self as someone worth serving. When you avoid hard work, when you procrastinate, when you choose comfort over growth, you are betraying your future. Transformation begins when you realize discipline is an act of self-love, not self-punishment. It is saying, I care enough about myself to not let my impulses control me. It means choosing nutrition over indulgence, learning over entertainment, purpose over convenience. The mind naturally resists, it prefers the familiar. Discipline trains it to tolerate effort, focus, and delayed gratification. You might believe you lack discipline, but often what you lack is clarity and commitment. When your why becomes stronger than your excuses, discipline becomes a natural extension of purpose. True discipline isn't loud. It doesn't seek praise. It manifests quietly in consistency, in restraint, in perseverance when no one is watching. A disciplined person does not need external validation. They are motivated by internal alignment. They know transformation requires patience. They understand that growth is slow, progress is subtle, and results appear long after effort begins. In the modern world of instant gratification, discipline is rebellion. It is choosing depth over distraction, mastery over mediocrity, and progress over pleasure. People lose themselves chasing stimulation, but discipline trains you to create, not consume, to build a life instead of scrolling through lives you envy. Discipline also means saying no to habits that numb you, relationships that drain you, environments that stunt you, thoughts that sabotage you. Every no to what harms you is a yes to the person you are becoming. And perhaps most importantly, discipline is not perfection. You will slip, you will fall, you will break routine. The undisciplined quit when they fail. The disciplined return. Returning is the true strength. Transformation doesn't come from never faltering. It comes from refusing to stop. You don't become strong by avoiding weakness. You become strong by meeting it with will and persistence. A disciplined mind becomes a liberated mind. When you master your habits, emotions, and impulses, you stop being a prisoner to circumstance. You become the architect of your life. Discipline isn't about control, it's about freedom. And the moment you prove to yourself that you can follow through, you unlock a new sense of identity. Someone capable, someone committed, someone evolving with intention rather than drifting through life unconsciously. That is the discipline that transforms a soul. Self-transformation requires courage, a courage far deeper than bravery in obvious moments of danger. It is the courage to face yourself. Most people are not hurt by the world. They are hurt by their refusal to meet their own truth. Transformation demands you confront your fears, insecurities, wounds, and illusions. It asks you to stand naked before your own psyche and accept what you find there, not with shame, but with responsibility. Many run from themselves through distraction, busyness, noise, and constant stimulation because silence reveals who they truly are. To change your life, you must be willing to look into the parts of yourself you have avoided, buried, or denied. It is uncomfortable, it is painful, but discomfort is not the enemy, stagnation is. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the willingness to walk through fear. Every new version of you requires the death of an old one, and death always feels frightening. The ego resists transformation because it clings to the familiar, even when the familiar hurts you. You may fear failing, but deeper still, you may fear succeeding because success means becoming someone unfamiliar, someone with new expectations and responsibilities. Real courage is choosing growth over comfort, evolution over repetition. It is daring to believe you deserve a life aligned with your highest potential, even when doubt whispers otherwise. There is also a moral courage required in transformation, the courage to admit where you have been wrong, where your habits have harmed you, where your excuses have limited you. The courage to apologize when necessary, to forgive when overdue, to release people and identities when they no longer serve your higher self. This kind of courage is quiet but powerful. It is refusing to stay trapped in cycles that numb you. It is walking away from environments that do not honor your growth. It is standing alone if it means standing true. The world often rewards conformity, imitation, and comfort. Courage demands rebellion not against society, but against your lower nature. Courage is also the decision to continue even when you feel weak. The strongest people are not the ones who never break. They are the ones who break but choose to rebuild. You will doubt yourself. You will question the path. You will feel lost, but transformation belongs to those who keep moving anyway. You do not need giant steps. You only need forward steps. Courage whispers, try again. It reminds you that every fear you conquer becomes a seed of strength within you. Fear is a gatekeeper, not an enemy. Behind it lies your expansion. Ultimately, courage is the permission you give yourself to evolve. It is choosing your becoming over your history. It is trusting that you can grow into someone wiser, stronger, freer. It is understanding that you are not bound by what you were, but liberated by what you are willing to face. Courage doesn't guarantee an easy life, it guarantees a real one, lived with depth and dignity. And in the act of choosing courage again and again, you do not just change your life, you transform the very essence of who you are. Self-transformation demands patience, a patience many people never develop because they confuse progress with immediacy. We live in a world wired for instant gratification, instant answers, instant entertainment, instant validation. But transformation is slow, subtle, and often invisible at first. The greatest changes do not announce themselves loudly. They unfold quietly within the mind, shaping thought patterns, shifting emotional responses, rewiring identity. To grow into a new self, you must be willing to endure the space between who you are and who you are becoming. That space feels uncertain, uncomfortable, and often lonely, yet it is sacred. Patience is not passivity. It is the maturity to hold your vision steady even when results have not yet arrived. The impatient seek change like a sprint. The transformed understand it is a pilgrimage. You cannot force a seed to grow by pulling at its leaves. The same is true for the self. It grows through time, repetition, setbacks, and learning. Many give up not because transformation is impossible, but because they stop too soon. They abandon the process when it feels slow, forgetting that slowness is not failure, it is nature. Trees do not doubt their growth simply because it is gradual. You, too, must trust that effort accumulates even when progress is silent. Every disciplined habit, every honest reflection, every act of courage is a brick laid in the architecture of your future self. Patience teaches you to detach from immediate results and focus instead on direction. Progress is rarely linear. Some days you advance, some days you stumble, some days you feel nothing changing at all. Patience gives you the resilience to keep walking anyway. It protects you from self-sabotage born of frustration or self-judgment. It reminds you that slowness is not weakness, it is depth. The most meaningful forms of growth cannot be rushed. Emotional healing, self-awareness, confidence, mastery, inner peace. These are earned gradually through repeated effort and steady commitment. Patience also cultivates humility. It teaches you that not everything bends to your will at your chosen pace. The ego wants instant proof of success. The soul knows transformation operates on timeless rhythms. When you practice patience, you learn to surrender control without surrendering intention. You become capable of enduring discomfort without collapsing into self-doubt. You stop measuring progress by the world's metrics and begin measuring it by inner shifts, clearer thoughts, calmer reactions, deeper understanding, more conscious choices. And there is another gift patience brings. It deepens your relationship with the present. When you stop chasing immediate change, you begin to engage fully with where you are. Transformation is not found in rushing toward a future version of yourself. It is found in showing up wholly in each moment, doing what growth requires right now. Every present moment lived consciously becomes a thread in the tapestry of your future. To be patient is to trust the process, to trust yourself, and to trust time. It is knowing that what you nurture consistently will eventually flourish. Transformation is not a sudden event, it is a continuous unfolding. Those who endure the quiet phases, the uncertain seasons, and the slow evolution are the ones who emerge with genuine inner power. Patience does not just change your life, it changes the foundation of your being, allowing growth to take root in a way that is lasting, grounded, and real. Self-transformation requires surrender, not surrender in the sense of defeat, but surrender in the deepest psychological and spiritual form, letting go of who you were so you can become who you must be. Most people cling to an outdated sense of self, gripping their past like a life raft even as it drags them under. They hold on to old identities, old beliefs, old stories about who they are and what they are capable of. But transformation asks for release. It demands that you unload the emotional luggage of your history so you can step into a future unburdened. Surrender means accepting that growth cannot coexist with rigid self-definition. You must dissolve who you think you are to meet who you truly are. This surrender is not passive. It is an act of immense strength. To surrender is to stop forcing life to fit your expectations and allow it to reveal your deeper path. It is loosening the ego's grip on certainty and opening yourself to transformation that you cannot yet fully comprehend. Most suffering comes from resistance, resisting change, resisting truth, resisting loss, resisting growth. When you surrender, you do not give up your power, you reclaim it. You stop wrestling with life and start aligning with it. You begin to see that letting go is not losing, it is making space for evolution. Surrender also means releasing control over how transformation unfolds. We often want growth on our terms, at our pace, through predictable steps, but true inner change rarely follows the map we draw. It surprises us, it disrupts us, it asks us to travel through confusion, emptiness, and uncertainty. In surrender, you learn to trust that not knowing is a doorway, not a failure. You stop demanding clarity as a condition for movement. You learn that transformation begins where certainty ends. Only when you stop controlling will you start becoming. There is also the surrender of emotional weight, the grudges, the bitterness, the expectations, the guilt, the identities shaped by past wounds. Many guard their pain as if it defines them, but pain is a chapter, not a self. When you surrender old emotional patterns, you reclaim your inner space. Forgiveness becomes a tool of freedom, not a favor to someone else. Releasing resentment becomes a way to breathe again. You stop rehearsing old battles and begin living new possibilities. The mind that clings to yesterday cannot create tomorrow. Ultimately, surrender reveals the truth. Transformation is not something you force, it is something you allow. You do not sculpt the new self with will alone. You also create it through emptiness, openness, and trust. Surrender invites life to participate in your evolution. It moves you from ego-driven striving into soul-driven becoming. And in that space, real transformation takes place quietly, profoundly, authentically. You stop trying to control who you are, and instead you let yourself unfold. In surrender, you do not lose yourself. You meet yourself for the first time.